Alright guys, welcome to the Tuesday directions video, and it's a note day, so this is going to be a little bit longer of a video, but stick with me because I'm going to go through the notes here for our first day. So Greece now, moving on here, as you guys know with the PowerPoint, if you see this vocab symbol, it's an important slide. If you see this target, it's an important slide, and we'll kind of just dive right into it here, get things started. With Greece, the geography of the location is very important. We have valleys, mountains, and then we're kind of surrounded by the sea. So Greece is very isolated from like the rest of the world. But even within Greece, these different city-states are isolated from each other because of the mountains and the valleys. So with that, we get totally different cultures. So each city-state really is a different country. On one side of the coin, we have Athens, or the Athenians, which is all about, the birthplace of democracy, education, philosophy, law. Okay, that's like their thing. And then not too far away, we have Sparta, which would be like communist, militaristic, education. Basically, nothing else is important besides the military. So it's kind of funny when people go to Sparta, they talk about how bad the food is because no one knows how to cook because they're spending all the time working on warfare. So just different stuff like that. So Greece is made up of all these different city-states, and we'll kind of see them come together as the unit goes on. So as again, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Delphi, and Thebes, each state controlled small areas, and over time, inter-city rivalries would be established, and we'll definitely see that. All right, so Bronze Age Greece basically is where we're going to kind of start here, I guess, way back when, with the Minoan civilization, and Crete is their main city. We're not going to spend too much time on the old Greece. We're going to kind of skip through some of this stuff. You read some of this stuff yesterday. Basically, we have the Minoan civilization, and that's where it all kind of begins. This is where we get like the Battle of Troy is with these people. So the one thing we do have to know is this guy right here, Homer. He's in blue. He's important. A lot of the stuff that we know about ancient Greece, like before Sparta, is from this guy named Homer. So I'll just kind of stop here and read. So Homer is a poet, and he writes. They call these epics. All right, the two great epic poems. It's a poem, but it's a story all combined into one, and they're very long. All right, so Homer, he's famous because he writes the two epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. All right, and you guys are gonna have to know that for the quiz. So who's the author? A historian named Homer, like Homer Simpson, and he writes two great epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. All right, we'll kind of talk about that. So that's important. All right. Another important thing we're going to see later on is that Greeks would seek out oracles for advice or predictions of the future. The most prestigious was the Oracle at Delphi. All right. Now, the Oracle at Delphi is going to play a big role when we talk about the Battle of Thermopylae, Battle of Thermopylae with the 300 Spartans against the Persians. So we'll see the Oracle at Delphi be there too. But again, this is a quiz question as well. Okay, it's going to say the most famous oracle or the most prestigious oracle was the oracle at blank, Delphi. All right, but we'll talk more about that later. But Homer's a test question, the Iliad and the Odyssey is a test question, and so is the oracle at Delphi. And we'll talk more about the oracle and mythology as we kind of get into it as a bigger theme. The Iliad is the epic poem, and inside the Iliad is where we get the story of the Battle of Troy and the Trojan horse. All right, and I think everyone kind of knows that story with the Trojan horse. The army's inside. They're able to, they basically issue the horse as a peace treaty offering, and so the other side of the coin, the people that think they won the war, brings the Trojan horse into their city. They start partying, festival. Everyone's drunk, and then people bust out of this Trojan horse and they slaughter everybody inside the city of Troy. Obviously. Well, I guess maybe not obviously, I kind of broke the hearts of students yesterday. This story is not real, okay? It's a fictional story. There are some, evidence out there that this could be true, but there's strong evidence out there that this is not true. So kind of use this with a grain of salt. Again, the Iliad and the Odyssey, kind of fictional stories, and the Trojan horse is one of those things too. But you do have to know that the Battle of Troy is in the story of the Iliad. So make sure you jot that down. The story of the Trojan horse and the Trojan War is inside Homer's epic, the Iliad. And that's how we know about it. Okay, we know that it's fought over Helena of Troy. She gets captured. You know, the army goes after her, try to save her, and then we have years and years of warfare. Now, the Iliad is like part one of this story. The Iliad follows this guy named Odysseus. And so throughout the Iliad, you know, he becomes friends with like Achilles, all those kind of people with the Achilles heel. That comes up in the Iliad. For you guys that don't know, Achilles is this kind of fictional hero, and he's supposed to be immortal because his mother, when he was a kid, grabbed him by the heel and dipped him into this water, this kind of like, I don't know, fountain of youth type deal, but basically it made him immortal. Every part of his body that touched the water was good. But remember now, she was hanging on to the heel, so the heel never got to touch the water, so the heel was still mortal, and he takes an arrow to the heel, and he eventually bleeds out, and that's kind of the story of Achilles. But anyways, the Odyssey then is kind of part two in this story, where Odysseus, he goes off to war, he fights with Achilles, they win, you know, the Battle of Troy, and the Odyssey is his 10-year-long struggle to return home to his wife. And on his way home, all these different gods kind of come up and challenge him. So we'll have like Poseidon trying to stop him on the ocean, you know, sending creatures after him. We get the Cyclops here. That's one of the famous ones. And while Odysseus is trying to make his way home, his wife basically has all these different suitors, and she's told that she has to kind of remarry. And so she kind of begins her 10-year-long sewing project, where she's sewing, and she just kind of keeps on telling the other guys that I'm thinking about it. All right, and eventually Odysseus makes it home, and it's the first kind of like a famous love story, and a story of how one man can overcome the odds no ordinary man can overcome. So kind of we get our first like hero story with Homer in the Iliad. All right. Let's move along here to the rise of Sparta and Athens. So Sparta is kind of interesting. They were not always the military power that we kind of know them as. All right. There's this place called Messina. It's kind of another city-state. What ends up happening is that Sparta goes there, and they basically defeat this place, Messina, and they turn everybody who was a citizen in Messina into kind of their slaves. And we'll talk about that. So they basically enslaved this entire area of Messina, and they're going to make these people farm for them because, right, Spartans don't got time to farm. It's just warfare. So they basically capture these people and make them do all the like other work. And we'll talk about that later on. All right, so let's focus more on Sparta here. It's located here on the map. As we move along, we want to know that the slaves, the Messenians that are captured and brought back, that's the term. They become called the Helots. Okay, and there are so many Helots in Sparta that actually these slaves outnumber Spartan citizens 8-1. All right, and since they get outnumbered 8-1, the Helots would revolt sometimes, and this was a really big fear for a lot of Spartans because again they were outnumbered 8-1. So a lot of Spartan law and kind of their culture was to try to suppress the Helot revolt. And you guys will see that in the video. I'm going to kind of save that for the video because we're running out of time here. But the Spartans are really worried about the Helots revolting. And so a lot of their laws are set up to keep them down, keep them enslaved. All right. So that's kind of the Spartans. We know that in Sparta, we know they're highly militaristic. There's like two ways to get your name on a gravestone in Sparta. One is to die in battle because you're giving it to the state. You're giving your life to the state. It's a very communist style of city-state, if we think about it in today's terms of politics. So the first way you can get your name on your gravestone is to die in battle, right? You gave your life to the state, to the city. You get your name on your gravestone. You're not just a nobody anymore. Okay, you did something for the state. The second thing that you can do to make it onto a gravestone is to die in childbirth. Okay, because again, you're giving your life for the state. You gave birth to a future soldier, and you sacrifice your life to do it. So those are the only two ways that you're going to have your name on a gravestone in Sparta to kind of keep that in mind. All right, so Sparta, highly militaristic. You guys probably know that by now. They're really famous now after that movie, The 300 Spartans, came out. Now, Greece is under kind of constant attack here by the Persians. Now, the Persians are probably the world's superpower at the time, and Greece, they think, is just another stepping stone for their world domination, for the most part. All right. So, now the rise of Persia, I'll save this for the video. Just the big guys that we want to know, Darius and Xerxes, I guess, for this part, and we'll talk more about them in the video. So I'm going to skip through that right now. The Persian Wars, we got 3 famous battles. We got the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Thermopylae, and the Battle of Salamis, which is a navy battle. Well, the Battle of Marathon is interesting because it's Athens. If you want to write this down, the Battle of Marathon, it's Athens versus Persia. Now, Athens does want the help of Sparta, but when they go to ask the Spartans to help, there is a religious festival going on in Sparta, and they ask the oracle at Delphi if they should cancel the festival and go fight, and the oracle basically says no, and so the Spartans kind of drag their feet. So Athens has to go fight Sparta, or Athens has to go fight the Persians on their own. But the Athens have a new tactic. It's called the phalanx, and you guys will see that in the video. So when the Athenians, they march 26 miles to Marathon. It's a city. They march to Marathon. They defeat the Persians using their phalanx. But now the Persians retreat back into the water, and they get back into their ships, and they're going to sail around. They're going to try to hit Athens in their home city while the whole army is still in Marathon. So the Persians are banking that their ships are faster than the Athenians can march, which is true. So what the Athenians do is they send this guy named Thucydides, and they send him to sprint 26 miles, which is now, the length of a marathon. So hint, hint, it's linked up there. So he sprints 26 miles, and he basically warns the city. He says, hey, we won the Battle of Marathon. Don't give up the city without a fight. And then he collapses and dies, according to the story. All right. So when the Athenians march back, they actually beat the Persians. So when the Persian ships show up to the bay, they see that the city is now guarded again, so they kind of just leave. All right. The Battle of Thermopylae with the 300 Spartans, we'll watch a video on that. I think you guys know this one for the most part. The one that goes kind of under the radar a little bit is the Battle of Salamis, and this is the big turning point in the war. The Persians had bigger ships and stronger ships, but in the Battle of Salamis, what they end up doing is they kind of bottleneck themselves in a small body of water, and they have big ships, but they're not very mobile or agile, so they can't turn the ships. The ships are kind of slow and bulky, so the smaller Athenian ships that are kind of linked up, they have like battering rams on the front of their ship, so they're just ramming into these giant ships, and they're going to sink them. They sink about 1/3 of the fleet right there. So the Battle of Salamis is kind of the turning point, and after this battle, the Persians are on the defensive for a few more years until they eventually give up. All right, so here's the 3 battles. And there's cool stories in between. I'm kind of let the video do that because we're pressed for time with only the 15 minutes, and I got a minute left. There's some cool story of revenge in between here with Xerxes and Darius and kind of the Persian leaders. You'll see that in the video. It's kind of interesting. But like I said, it's the big turning point of the war. And then we'll stop there today because we've got a minute. So big things that you'll see on the test. Battle of Marathon, Battle of Thermopylae, which I know doesn't seem like we spent a lot of time on these, but the video is going to do a lot more justice. And obviously we'll review tomorrow. So those will be on the quiz. A couple of these guys will be on the quiz, but again, the video will cover that for you. Helots are on the quiz, the Messenian enslaved by the Spartans, and also what the Spartans are very scared of them, and they don't want them to revolt. That'll be on the quiz. Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, city-states, Oracle at Delphi. That's the big stuff for today. I know it was fast, only 15 minutes, but I tried my best, guys. The videos will do a good job, the readings will do a good job, and obviously when we're in class, we can review a little bit more. But that's basically the notes for today. You can obviously look some more of this stuff up on your own. Use YouTube, use the internet to help you kind of gain more information. Obviously, these stories are out there everywhere, so kind of just use your own extreme ownership to go kind of find your sources. We'll probably be a reading guide on this later this week. But that's all I got, guys. I know it was fast, but it was about as good as we could do. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.